Psalm 121, starting in verse 1, it says, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil, and he shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. And let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. You can go ahead and be seated. This week, because a few weeks ago we wrapped up the series that we had been on, I've spent the last couple of weeks praying about, where God would lead for tonight. And in that time, in my devotions, I read this chapter, and God kept bringing my mind back to it. And here's what He kept leading me to it. And I'll start off with verse 1 and 2. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. Notice that's not a question. From whence cometh my help? My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Here's where God kept kind of leading my mind as I was studying this and praying about this last couple of weeks, is where does my help come from? Where does your help come from? Every one of us face things that require that we get help. We all face things that we just can't do on our own. We very often don't like to ask for help, especially us guys, but we face things on a regular basis that simply put, we can't do alone, whether it's a problem that may arise. I don't care who you are and how good your life may be. Every one of us face problems. We all have things that come up that we didn't expect, things that we thought would go smoothly, and then they didn't. In my backyard right now, we have a bit of a hillside, and my wife's already smiling. She knows where I'm headed with this. We decided, and mainly that means my wife decided, that we should dig up the hillside and make it flat and put a retention wall there. And we live in Spanaway, and I know that, and I've dug in Spanaway before, and to be totally honest, I enjoy digging. So, when we talked about it, I thought, okay, no big deal. The section is, I measured it out, 35 feet long, by 8 feet wide and about 3 feet deep. And I thought, okay, it's a lot, but I'll take my time, no big deal. And living in Spanaway, I expected rocks. I just underestimated how many rocks and how big the rocks. I have at this point pulled multiple rocks that are well over 100 pounds, and I figured this out. For every wheelbarrow of dirt that I haul 2 wheelbarrows of rocks. And that's not an exaggeration. Every wheelbarrow of dirt I haul is 2 wheelbarrows of rocks. And I'm only about half done at this point. Something that I thought going into it would be no problem has turned out to be a lot of work. And we have things like that in life all the time. Things that at first glance we look at and we think, well, no problem. We can handle this. And then we get into it and realize we can't. This thing that we thought, well, no problem, really is a problem. We're in a situation where we need help, whether it's a problem or whether it's something spiritual, some sort of spiritual thing that we are fighting, that we finally realize, I can't handle this alone. It's bigger than just me. I think of Ephesians 6:12, where it says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I don't know about you, but I read that list and I think everything on that list is bigger than I am. We think, well, I can handle this. I can't match up one-on-one against any of those things. I'm going to need help. We all have times that we just need help, whether it's problems in life or spiritual things, whether it's ministry things. I look at ministry and I realize really fast I can't do this myself. And I'm not just talking about pastoring things, but when it comes to preaching, I need help. When it comes to counseling, I need help. When it comes to making decisions, when it comes to working with teens, it's not a ministry that I take lightly, and I can't do it myself, and neither can you. We need help. I don't care what ministry that you're in. Anything I was thinking about, anything from college and career to nursery. If you're going to do it right, you're going to need help. So whatever area of life we're talking about, we all have those times where we need help, where we realize we can't do it on our own, which brings us kind of back to that question this evening: where is your help coming from? Because as humans, our natural reaction is to turn to a couple of different options. Our natural reaction is to turn maybe to self. When things get hard and it seems dumb, things get hard. I can't do this on my own, so I'm going to turn to myself and try harder. But we do. Don't we often do that? I'm going to just dig a little deeper and figure out a way to do it on my own anyways. For me, I know I just said it was stupid, but for me, that's what comes natural. I'm not one, you can ask my wife, I am not one to ask for help often. The older I get, the better I get about asking that. But especially as a teen and early 20s, I was kind of that mentality, asking for help is a sign of weakness. So if something was hard, you just found a way and did it anyways. Bo and I were talking about this a few weeks ago. And actually, the reason we were talking about it is he was complaining about how bad his back hurt. So we got talking about this, and he and I have been working alone long enough that when you're working alone, the job still has to be done. And for plumbing, tubs still have to be carried upstairs. So instead of asking framers to help, who probably would have anyways, our way, and he was the one who taught me this, and we've both done this, is turn it upside down and you put it on your back like a turtle and you just start walking with the thing. With a tub shower that's, 300 plus pounds. It's a heavy item. But that's kind of the natural mentality to me and to a lot of us. If there's something that needs help, we just kind of figure out a way to do it alone. For some people, they turn to self. For others, they turn to friends, someone who will help them get through, maybe a financial difficulty, or someone who will give them help when they need it, or who can give advice or can give a helping hand. Some go to family, or some to a counselor, some to a trusted leader. But all those kind of boil down to one category, and that is man. That's our natural reaction. Our natural is I have a problem, I need some person to help me. This evening I want us to see that when we turn, simply put, when we turn to man for help, we're turning the wrong way. Psalm 121 we start out with, he says, "My help cometh from the Lord." And then he spends the rest of the chapter giving God's qualifications. Spends the rest of the chapter explaining, if I turn to God for my help, here is what God does for me. Here is what God does when I turn to Him. That's what we're going to be looking at tonight, when God is our help. When we realize that when I need help, He's who I look to. Number one, He's my anchor. He's my foothold. If you look at verse 3, it says, He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. The way he words it, He doesn't suffer your foot to be moved. As a kid, where we lived, there was a hill that we called the Clay Cliff. I don't know how tall it really was. As a kid, I was convinced it was a mountain. I went back as an adult at some point, and it was very disappointing. I went back to be perfectly honest, because in my mind I remember this great mountain that we used to climb, and I went back as an adult and looked at it and thought, that was it, huh? But as a kid, I remember it being, this huge thing. It's tall and steep, and it's called a clay cliff for a reason. It was made out of clay. But my brother and myself and our friend Alex, we would often race to see who could get either to the top or the highest on the cliff before you tumbled back down to the bottom of it. And early on, we would think, okay, we're going to start by running at it. Maybe momentum will get me closer toward the top. So we get a running start. It didn't take long till we figured out the trick was finding solid footing. Because it's clay. As soon as your foot slips, you're headed to the bottom. You're not going anywhere. So rather than going fast, rather than getting a running start, we would kind of take our time and try to find solid footing to work our way up. A firm place to stand is important. This last week, Bo and I while Bo was here, we went duck hunting, and we've kind of made it a bit of a tradition that he and I do sometime around Thanksgiving every year. This year we mostly hunted from our kayaks, but at one point he and I got out and we walked around beside the lake a little bit. And after standing on, we were standing on what we thought was ground until Bo took a step and the ground shook. And we thought, well, that's interesting that this whole thing moved. So obviously it's not ground, so we started looking at it more, and it was just a giant clump of weeds all gathered together, floating there that we were walking on top of, a mass of weeds, which was fine until it broke apart, and we went from standing out of the water to waist deep in water about that fast, because we didn't have a firm footing. Something we thought was a firm footing real quickly wasn't. As the passage would put it, our foot was moved. So what the passage is talking about, when God is your help, He gives a firm place to stand. A firm place to stand. A firm place in life, some solid footing in life is an important thing. No one likes the idea of going through life with each step your foot slips a little. No one likes that. No one likes to go through life, thinking that they're going to fall each step they take. So a firm footing is important, but it's even more important when you're going through a problem. Having good footing when you're walking around on flat ground is really nice. But when you're walking on flat ground, if you fall, the consequences aren't all that bad. But having solid footing when you're walking next to a cliff, for instance, suddenly gains some importance. Because if you slip in that moment, the consequences are way worse. Either way, you're falling, but there's a little more importance behind solid footing next to a cliff. And the same is true in our life. Those times when you're thinking, I need help, those times when you're thinking, I can't do this alone, having solid footing, a place to anchor, a place to know that I won't fall, I'm secure, a place of safety is a big deal. And that doesn't come in turning to self. That doesn't come in turning to friends or to family or to any other man. That only comes when our help is from God. When our help is from God, He will be our anchor. When our help is from God, number two, He will... I'm going to say this now. I'm probably going to mention it again later. I was trying hard to go with all the same letter. So some of them are a little iffy, but just go with it. He will always be awake. Look at verse 3 through 5. It says, He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and stop right there at the end of verse 4. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. I want to look at this in two different ways. The Bible talking about he will neither slumber nor sleep. He that keepeth Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. First way is He's always on guard. I don't have to worry about God falling asleep and the devil attacking when He isn't ready. There's never a time where I have to worry, I wonder if God fell asleep and the devil might attack me while God's not prepared. Again, Bo and I this week, when he and I spend time together, I come back with lots of stories, but Bo and I this week, we were talking, and for duck hunting, usually it is you're hunting first light. To do that, you have to get up early enough to load your gear and to drive to the lake or wherever you're going, and then paddle to your spot and set up decoys and get settled in your blind, and all this has to happen an hour or so before daylight. Which means you're up very, very early doing this. And I can't tell you, and this is what we're talking about, I can't tell you the number of times that I've gone through all that work and I've done that, and then I've woken up in my blind and missed first light. Because I did all that work and then I got settled into my blind and got comfortable and fell asleep. And next thing I knew, the ducks were all gone and I was still sitting there. I wasn't on guard. I wasn't on guard. And when God is our help, I don't have to worry about God getting bored and falling asleep. I don't have to worry about Him not being ready for the devil's attacks. Have you ever thought about that? Attacks from the devil come, or problems of any sort for that matter come, and for us they seem like they come out of nowhere. For us a lot of times it seems like, where did this come from? I didn't see this coming. You ever thought it's never caught God off guard? How many times has something happened and you've thought, wow, I didn't see that coming? That's never happened to God. God's never had it where he thought, boy, devil, I didn't think you were going to do that, or I didn't realize that was coming. This passage is saying God doesn't slumber, is saying he's awake, he's on guard, but that also means that he's attentive. Let me get more specific with that. He is attentive to me. He's paying attention to me. It reminds me of when I really get interested in something. This is not a good thing about myself at all, but I'm not much of a reader. I try very, very hard to be. I buy books all the time and start books all the time. But a book really has to grab my attention for me to read the book, actually, or finish it. But from time to time, I'll actually find one that really gets a hold of me. And when it does, I focus on that book. When I find one that I'm really interested in, it doesn't really matter what's going on around me. It doesn't matter what noises the kids are making. It doesn't, the house could be on fire. It doesn't distract me from what I'm reading. I am focused. I am attentive to what I'm doing. And that's how God is toward us. He doesn't fall asleep. He doesn't get distracted. He's attentive to me. I didn't write down the reference, but in the book of Psalms it tells us that he inclines his ear to us. He's listening for us. He's listening for us. He's watching us. He's paying attention to me. Which to me is a... It is both one of those things that's like, wow, really kind of builds you up and humbling all at the same time. That God, where we started, my help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. God, who made heaven and earth, is paying attention to what I do. That he is inclining my ear. He is awake. He is attentive to me. He's listening to me. When God is your help, then God's your anchor. When God is your help, he's always awake. Thirdly, when God is your help, he is, and again, the A's, okay. He is asylum. Not insane asylum, but I'm trying to stick with the letter A. And when I think asylum, see, other people, no one else thought it was weird. I saw asylum and thought, asylum? That's the only A that works for this, but it was the only one I could come up with. Asylum means a safe place. Amen. Yes. It means a safe place. Look at the end of verse 5. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. Continuing into verse 6, the sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. It says he is our shade. I thought that this must mean something more than shade, so I looked this up in multiple different concordances, and shade means shade. I thought there's got to be something bigger here. Shade means shade, but you think about it for a bit. What is shade? It's protection. It's protection. It's a safe place. You think about where the psalmist would have been when this was written. This is a hot area where too much exposure to the sun can be a dangerous thing. Shade is a form of protection from the elements. A place of shade is a safe place. You're protected. You can hide from the elements, whatever they may be there. But shade is also a comfortable place. I looked it up for this. The temperature difference from direct sunlight to a shaded area ranges anywhere from 14 to 35 degrees cooler. 14 to 35. The average is 27.5 degrees cooler if you're in shade than in the sun. That's a lot. That shade is a place of comfort. A place where you can feel safe and protected, where you can cool off. But shade is also a place of rest. You're safe, you're protected, you're comfortable, and you can rest. And when God is your help, that's exactly what he'll be to you. When God is our help, that's exactly what he'll do for us. He'll provide a safe place, a place where we are protected and where we can be comfortable and where we can rest in him. When God's our help, he'll be our anchor. He's always awake. He'll be our asylum. And then lastly tonight, when your help comes from God, he will assist you. He will assist you. Look at verse 7 and 8. It says, the Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Verse 5, it says, the Lord is thy keeper, both kind of going hand in hand. The passage repeatedly, though, uses the word preserve. Think about that word and what does it do? It keeps something alive. A wildlife preserve is to protect animals that are inside it. It keeps them alive from predators or things that would want to harm them. It keeps them alive from me. You think of preservatives in your food. What do? They help keep the food from spoiling. Maybe this is morbid. I don't know. I worked at a funeral home for a while. I think of preserve. I think of embalming fluid. It kind of does the same thing. Doesn't really fit, so we'll get back on track here. But put this very simply, when God is your help, He'll keep you. He'll keep you. Passage in verse 7 and 8 listed a few things. The Lord preserves thee from all evil and preserve thy soul, and the Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in. He'll keep you. He'll preserve you from evil. A few years back now, I preached a series on trusting the Lord, and to me it astounded me how many times the Bible talks about God being our shield or our refuge or our high tower or something along those lines. Over and over, the Bible makes it clear that He will protect us because He preserves us from evil. He'll preserve, again, verse 7, He preserves thy soul. Sunday night I was able to lead Zach to the Lord. Right after church, I was able to talk to him. And as a parent, it doesn't get much better than being able to lead your kids to the Lord. But in that, I explained to him that once you're saved, the Bible tells us God puts us in His hand and that no man can pluck us out. God is holding on to us and no one can take us from God. You know what it is that He's doing when He does that? He is preserving your soul. And then it says He'll keep, the way it words it, shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in. He'll keep your path. He'll keep your path. I think of the 23rd Psalm. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness. When God is my help, He leads my way, He guides my steps, and He shows me the way I ought to go. When God is our help, He's our anchor, He's always awake, He's our asylum, and He will assist. Psalm 27 verse 1 says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When God is my help, what do I have to fear? I mean, seriously. When God is your help, what do you have to fear? What can Satan possibly throw at you that God can't handle? What problem can the world put in our way that God isn't bigger than? God is more than capable to help, and that's often our fear, is how big our problems are or what Satan's putting in our way. But if God is our help, whom shall I fear? Of whom shall I be afraid? The psalmist lays it out very clearly here in Psalm 121, that his help doesn't come from his own strength. His help doesn't come from his friends. His help doesn't come from his armies. His help is from God. So when problems come your way, make this personal here for a moment. When problems come your way, who do you turn to? When problems come your way, who is it you go to for help? Is it yourself? Is it your friends? Or do you turn to the only one who can really help every time? Is your help from God? Let's pray.